Every story we tell is a journey, a thrilling adventure that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our community come together from all around the world. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Tomorrow, we have a special story just for you. Trust us, you won't want to miss it. See you on the next adventure. The one time a royal guard broke the rules, you won't believe why. It was a bright afternoon at Buckingham Palace. The air buzzed with excitement as tourists crowded near the iconic gates, cameras clicking away as they admired the stoic royal guards standing motionless in their traditional red uniforms and tall bearskin hats. Among the crowd was James Carter, a 42-year-old deaf man from Manchester. He had spent years watching documentaries about the royal guards, fascinated by their discipline and unwavering presence. Today was his first time visiting Buckingham Palace, and he wanted to do something special, something no one else in the crowd had ever done before. As he stepped closer to the silent soldier standing at his post, James smiled warmly. He wasn't here to test the guards' patience. He wasn't here to mock their discipline like so many tourists often did. He simply wanted to show his respect, in his own way. Raising his hand, James signed a simple greeting in British Sign Language, BSL. "Hello." The guard did not move. James expected this. He knew the rules. The royal guards never react, never speak, never break their stance, no matter what. But that didn't stop him from trying. Still smiling, James continued. "How are you?" he signed. Then, with genuine admiration, he added, "Thank you for your service." The crowd around him began to take notice. Some tourists paused their conversations, watching as James made an effort to connect in the most respectful way possible. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't a test. It was a moment of pure sincerity. And yet, the guard remained completely still. James nodded in understanding. He had expected this. The royal guard's duty was to stand firm, unshaken by anything around them. But as James lowered his hands and turned to leave, he had no idea. Something extraordinary was about to happen. James hesitated for a moment, his eyes still fixed on the royal guard standing motionless before him. He knew the rules. He knew that these guards were trained to ignore anything that wasn't an immediate threat. But that didn't stop him from trying one more time. He had come all this way, hoping that somehow, even in the smallest way, he could create a moment of connection. So, with a determined but respectful smile, he raised his hands again. This time, he signed something different. "I appreciate your dedication." The crowd around him began to take more notice. A few people nudged each other, pointing at James and whispering. A middle-aged woman standing nearby leaned toward her husband, her brow furrowed in curiosity. "What is he doing?" she asked. Her husband, still holding up his phone to record the moment, responded, "I think he's using sign language. But the guard isn't allowed to respond, right?" More tourists paused their conversations and turned their attention to the scene unfolding in front of them. Unlike many tourists who tried to make the guards react by yelling, dancing, or even taunting them, James was different. There was no mockery. No disrespect. Just genuine admiration. And the crowd could sense it. Some people began to softly smile, others folded their arms and watched with interest. Yet, despite James' effort, the royal guard remained completely still. Not a single movement. Not a single acknowledgement. James lowered his hand slowly, his face showing no disappointment, just understanding. He knew this would happen. This was what made the Royal Guards legendary, their ability to remain completely composed no matter what was happening around them. But even as he turned slightly, ready to step away, the atmosphere in the crowd had changed. It was no longer just another tourist moment. Something about this interaction felt different. And no one, especially James, could have predicted what was about to happen next. James took a deep breath, letting his hands fall to his sides. He knew this was the expected outcome. The Royal Guard would not react. They never did. Yet, despite knowing the rules, he still felt a small pang of disappointment. Not because he had been ignored, he understood the discipline required for this role, but because he had hoped, just for a moment, that his gesture of respect could somehow be acknowledged. The crowd around him had grown quiet. What had started as mild curiosity had turned into something else. Some people had lowered their cameras, no longer just capturing a casual tourist moment. They were watching something more meaningful unfold. James gave the guard one last look, then nodded as a silent gesture of appreciation. Just as he turned to leave, it happened. A single, small movement. So subtle that most of the crowd didn't even notice at first. But James did. The Royal Guard, after standing like a statue for so long, shifted his fingers slightly on his rifle. James froze. And then, something extraordinary happened. With absolute precision, the guard raised his hand, just slightly, and in the most controlled, disciplined manner, formed a single sign in British Sign Language, BSL. "Thank you." The moment lasted less than a second, but to James, it felt timeless. His eyes widened in shock, then immediately softened into pure gratitude. The crowd gasped, realizing they had just witnessed something incredibly rare, an exception to the unbreakable discipline of the Royal Guard. Some people exchanged stunned glances, while others began murmuring in awe. "He actually responded," one man whispered. James, still absorbing what had just happened, smiled broadly, his heart pounding. The gesture had been so small, so controlled, yet it meant everything. It wasn't just a break in protocol. It was a moment of human connection, an unspoken understanding between two people from completely different worlds. And even though the Royal Guard immediately returned to his rigid stance, the impact of that single moment would never fade. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. James stood rooted to the spot, his mind racing as he replayed what had just happened. Had he really seen that? Had the Royal Guard, the embodiment of discipline and unwavering duty, just broken protocol for him? The crowd, initially silent, suddenly came to life. Whispers turned into excited murmurs, and then into audible gasps as people around him processed what they had just witnessed. "He moved," someone exclaimed. "No way! Did you see that?" another voice echoed. A woman with her phone raised, clearly recording the entire thing, let out a soft chuckle of disbelief. "I think I just caught something incredible on camera." But the most powerful reaction came from James himself. For years, he had lived in a world of silence, often feeling like an observer rather than a participant in moments like these. But this time, he had been seen. Truly seen. His hands trembled slightly as he signed a final thank you back, knowing full well the guard couldn't acknowledge it again. But that didn't matter. Because he had already received the rarest acknowledgement possible, one that transcended words. A soft applause started in the crowd, then grew louder. Not the kind of applause that tourists gave during a changing of the guard. This was something different. It was respectful, heartfelt, and filled with admiration. James, overwhelmed, turned back to face the silent soldier who had just changed his perspective forever. And there he stood, as still and unwavering as before, eyes locked straight ahead. As if nothing had happened. But James knew better. The rest of the crowd knew better. This wasn't a slip in discipline. It wasn't weakness. It was a moment of quiet humanity, a soldier acknowledging another person, not as a tourist, but as an equal. James blinked back the sting of emotion, then took a step back. The moment had passed, but the impact would last a lifetime. As the applause died down, the weight of the moment settled over the crowd. What they had just witnessed wasn't just a rare break in protocol, it was something far more meaningful. James, still standing near the royal guard, took a deep breath. His heart was full. He had expected nothing from this encounter. Yet, he had received everything. The small gesture from the soldier, a mere second of acknowledgement, meant more than words ever could. It proved something powerful. Discipline doesn't erase humanity. Rules don't override respect. And sometimes, even in the strictest of roles, there are moments when a simple act of kindness speaks louder than tradition. James took a final glance at the motionless soldier, then stepped away, giving the man back his space. As he turned toward the crowd, he noticed something surprising. People weren't just watching anymore. They were moved. A young couple nearby smiled at him, eyes filled with admiration. A father bent down, whispering to his son, likely explaining why that moment had been so important. And the woman who had recorded everything? She simply nodded at James, as if to say, "You just became part of history." James exhaled, shaking his head in quiet disbelief. He hadn't come here expecting to make an impact. Yet, here he was, standing in the middle of Buckingham Palace, having experienced something so rare, so powerful, that it had silenced an entire crowd. This moment wasn't just about him. It was about the power of respect, the unspoken bond between a citizen and a soldier, a moment of unity beyond rules and protocol. As James walked away, blending back into the bustling crowd of tourists, he carried something with him. A story. A lesson. And the undeniable truth that, sometimes, even the most disciplined warriors find a way to show kindness, without ever breaking their honor. What do you think about this rare moment of connection? Should discipline always be absolute? Or are there times when humanity should take precedence? Have you ever witnessed a moment where strict rules were momentarily set aside for something greater? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible moments that remind us why respect, discipline, and kindness can coexist. See you in the next one.